Hi, Pallavi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good as well. Just hoping for a good close to this week.
Yes. And we're just waiting for Shivangi. So
Sure.
once he joins us, then we can start.
Done, done.
And how has this week been? I'm assuming busy because you're saying that you're waiting for it to close.
But isn't every week like this right now?
Yeah, it does feel very fast, but still very slow at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, actually. So
So
same here. I think ever since the lockdown or the work from home has been continuing, what is important is that you bring it close to the week.
yeah,
Uh, you set the boundaries and you say that, hey, this is when I'm going to say that my week is done.
yes,
Very important for self health, I would say.
yeah,
How are
true.
things at your end?
Good, very good. Very busy. We're doing lots of things at Rest the Case. Just 1 minute. I think Shivangi is for some reason not able to join. I will just check again.
Just help her out. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah. I have sent her the invite. We'll wait.
I actually did not know that you can have Instagram live with three people.
Yeah, you can have 3 people on Instagram. I think it's a new or more also actually.
Really?
Yeah,
I don't know. We have
I
never.
think
The last time I did Instagram live, I was the one who was initiating. I was so bad at it that it was so crappy. It was so crappy. After that, I've not attempted initiating an Insta live from my end. I'm too scared to mess it up. And even for joining, I wasn't sure if you can have more
yeah,
than two people, like one initiating and the second
yeah,
receiving.
yeah. So
So
I think Shivangi has joined. So Shivangi, we've sent you a request. If you can see that, or then I'll send it to you again. Yeah, I have. I've sent you a request, Shivangi. If you could join. But I think today's topic is a really nice topic. It's very like something that we should talk about.
we should talk about it every day. Every day. I mean, today, like for the past, we've been having these conversations with some of the workplace leaders, and I think very soon I will write a book, The Excuses That We Give Ourselves Not to Focus on
Yeah,
Workplace Safety for Women. Um, I mean, somewhere we have to bring it to the priority level. Sometimes the time is not right, sometimes the budget is not there, sometimes it's just something else, which is, and it's funny when people tell me that we are focused and we are busy with other compliances, and this is not a priority. And in my head, I'm thinking, what else do you think Posh is? It is a compliance, like, you know. But that's the sad part, I think, that we're not really looking at it from the angle that it is something which is not an optional thing.
hmm.
It's not something that you can do away with, but it still continues to be taken in that manner.
Yeah,
So yes, I'm glad that this conversation is happening. If it were in my control, I think we will have these conversations every day.
every day. Yeah, and I think one day, you're right. One day is not enough to talk about these things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's why you have organizations and work like what Shivani is doing. We are doing
Yeah,
so many other fabulous organizations just on an basis, because I think of a long time ago we realized that, hey, this is a conversation that we are willing to have every day. You know how to choose a problem that you want to live with for the rest of your life. So it's like that. Shivangi hasn't received the
yeah. I
request.
am sending it to her. I am not sure why she's not getting it.
You know, she can also send you the request.
Yeah, so Shivangi, if you can try and send us a request to be on the live, we can like accept it and then you can come online. You can try that also.
So you're working from office.
Yeah, currently we're working from office.
Hmm.
We have a very small team as of now who's coming to office. So,
How big is the team now?
um, so we are 10 people.
Nice. Time for you to comply. I'm gonna come. I'm gonna send you a separate message on this.
Okay. So I don't know why Shivangi's. Shivangi, can you send us a request if that's possible to be
I
on?
think I think you should call her and like just tell
Yeah,
step by step. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
we'll just call and check what issue she's having.
Mhm.
So, till then, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do at Ungender?
Well, in a nutshell, we are civilizing workplaces.
Okay.
You know how for the longest time people are born and then they're exposed to the societal dynamics of how gender should behave and how you should not say no and like remember those times as a child people will just come into our house and our parents will say that, oh, our child sings so well, our child does
Yeah.
so well, and then they're asking you to do these things and then you're just supposed to do it. If you're a good singer you'll sing, you can't
Yeah.
say no. So how we are not taught to say no,
To say
how
no.
people can just invade into our personal lives. Then we started watching movies, and the movies are the only school to understand the gender construct, how we should be behaving. Then we enter our schools, and then we enter our colleges, and nobody is actually talking about these things. There's no concept or construct of boundaries. Getting to know each other is does not come with a rule book. Our jokes are mainly motivated by the harsh sexism which is present. We are another form of humor that we usually enjoy is this crass humor, that something is something is funny if you make somebody look bad, or
Yeah.
you make fun of somebody's inability or able to be of the same level as you. I think all these learnings that are subconsciously coming to us, we end up bringing them to the workplaces.
True.
And nobody told us any better. They should have, right? So we can't
Yeah.
really say, hey, we humans are innocent. Somebody should have taken that step. Somebody should have taken that initiative and told us that, you know what, now you're in this space and you should not be doing this. It's almost like how the world is so hell-bent in teaching us that if you walk into a five-star hotel, then you can't eat with hands. You have to use that fancy cutlery. You
Correct.
can't sit alti palti in a five-star hotel because that's not what's going to look good there. And the world has been so focused on teaching us about these superficial etiquettes, but they never took time to make us sit aside and say that, hey, this is how you interact and you deal with other humans. Like
Yeah.
that human boundary is something that was never part of our curriculum, in a structured or even in an unstructured manner. Nobody ever bothered teaching us. So at Ungender, that's what we do. We do it using the legal framework of our country. There are laws which are put in place, and we are working even outside India. So there are laws, there are policies, there are frameworks that are there being talked about in most part of the world right now. And the problem is that people don't get them because they're written in a language that people can't understand. Then you need a
Yeah.
translator. So we
Yeah.
become that translator wherein we'll tell companies that, hey, this is what you're actually supposed to be doing. So drawing the relevance for them, that why this is important. And that's what any regular day at Ungender will look like. So that's what the journey has been, and that's what we do. This is the problem. This is the headache that we have taken up. Like
Yeah.
everyone else, I just saw Sonal. She's also joined in. She's working on menstruation, right? Making people become more aware about what it means other than just the word. I think all of us just pick a problem and we say that we're going to see this through. So for us at Ungender, this is what it.
Okay. So I think Shivangi has also joined us.
Hey, Shweta.
Hi.
Hi, Shivangi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
All good, all good. I'm so sorry for the delay. Somehow the request option just wasn't coming, so it took a while. Sorry about this.
No
So,
issues. I got some extra time on school. No biggies.
yeah. So we'll start now, and we'll have Shreya Sharma, who's our CEO, to conduct the interview with you people. Yeah. So I'll just hand it over to Shreya. Thank you. Good night. Very nice talking to you, Pallavi.
Same here.
Yeah.
Bye.
Hi.
Hi, Shreya.
How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. It's dark here, but I can see where Shivangi is. It's still daylight.
It is, yeah. Hi, Shreya.
So I'm quickly just going to introduce what we're talking about today. And a little bit about Respirate. So labor organizations was established over a century ago. Since then, a lot has changed in terms of workplace environments for women. However, not so much to discuss the progression of the closing gender gap that seems to be stalled and in some cases reversing in the recent years. Uh, Although I would first like to welcome everyone to our first Instagram live interview. Hopefully, we have a lot of because they seem kind of fun. So this event is hosted by Rest the Case. So whoever doesn't know Rest the Case, we are a legal aggregator platform. We are a one-stop solution for legal services and information. We say this with pride because we have carefully designed a website which is helps everyone to get legal help, whether it's legal consultation, it is creating documents with our document template, or our knowledge bank, which is a place for every curious mind. Um, on the occasion of Women's Equality Day, we have gathered here to discuss the progress of women and their inclusivity worldwide, but especially in India. The ripple effect of women's suffrage movement in America was the reason why Women Equality Day is celebrated today. Because on this day, women were then allowed to vote in America. So we want to today discuss two important things: equality and inclusivity. And who better than two eminent women in law professionals, who are making a difference and changing the way the world looks at women. So, I know that Pallavi has already spoken about ungendered and not herself. But if you could just give us a short comment against that, people who have just joined us will also know about you, and then Shivangi could.
Sure, great. Thank you, firstly, for organizing this and having me alongside Shivangi. It's very rare that Shivangi and I share the platform together, so very happy, very excited that we are doing this session with you, Rest the Case, today. And in the briefest, because we have to start with the session also, in the briefest manner, if I can talk about ungender, as the name goes, the gender construct is so deeply rooted in our society that we have looked at it as an ecosystem problem from the time that we walk into schools, society, social spaces, workplaces, the kind of content that we create, the products that we make, the marketing and the advertisement initiatives that we do, everywhere the gender construct and the lens is being used right now. And the world is kind of divided into the gender norms. So for us at Ungender, we have looked and we are looking at workplaces very dedicatedly from the lens, from the legal lens, and uprooting these gender norms and eliminating them. So what would a world look like if we could actually throw away or burn that, invisible book that says that what a gender should be and how it should behave and what it can do and how many genders are there, what sexuality. If we actually just throw away that rule book, the kind of equality that will exist and the kind of equity that everyone will be able to enjoy, which is rightfully theirs, is the world that Ungender is working towards.
That is. Thank you so much. So now, Shivangi, could you please introduce what you do?
Thank you so much for having me, firstly. And Pallavi, I think I totally resonate with what you just said. So I'm extremely happy about getting into this conversation today. So and it's really nice to hear the way you said it. And I really I want to wait and hope that someday we really reach that stage where something like this really happens, where gender doesn't play a role. So hopefully we'll make it all happen. And as far as Posh at Work is concerned, I think we also look at a similar aspect, but talking about more from a sexual harassment point of view, because that also sometimes gets gendered. And Posh at Work is about looking at sexual harassment that people face in different perspectives and what it is that can be done. And we try and look at providing all of the different kinds of options and services that we can to workplaces to ensure that eventually they do become healthier and safer workplaces for everybody. So that's what we are at Posh at Work.
Okay. We're so glad that both of you have decided to be a part of this, because even just listening to you all talk about what you are is an inspiration in itself, and then actually doing that work is just so I'm going to start with my first question then. So I want to you, Pallavi. So by definition, although you have just said that we should not have that word, but there, gender inclusivity means the practice of providing equal access to opportunities and resources irrespective of gender. What, according to you, take away of this definition?
I didn't get the second part of the question.
So I was saying that by definition, gender inclusivity means the practice of providing equal access to opportunities and resources irrespective of gender. So what, according to you, is the takeaway of this definition?
See, the takeaway is not for people like you, me, and even Shivangi, right? Because we are already the converted. We already know what are the takeaways and what are the outputs that we are looking at. The takeaways for the larger community, and most importantly, I would say for the businesses, right? Because that's where it starts speaking money. That's where it starts making economic sense and not just the social sense. See, any change will happen when the businesses where the economic independence and economic freedom actually rests is where we need to make sure that they get the meaning of it. Right? So what it means for them is actually a wider access to a talent pool which they have just been ignoring because of some distorted understanding that certain genders are not equipped to handle certain roles, or certain genders will actually disrupt the workplace culture instead of improving it, or only some specific genders are good at talking money, being efficient, being able to prioritize business. I don't even know why companies expect that employees should prioritize the job over everything else in their life. But somehow that distorted understanding does exist, right? Just imagine, instead of a 10 people talent pool, where my bargaining power is just limited to 10, if I suddenly wake up one day and I tell myself that, oh my God, not just 10, I can actually choose from the 1,000 people. There are 1,000 candidates that I can choose from. Imagine the change in the bargaining power. That's what it means for the businesses, right? What it means for the other part of the society is absolutely the agency will find more freedom to flourish. We keep saying that people don't have agency, people don't. Everyone has the agency. The problem is the agency is stored somewhere. It's changed at some point in time. It's actually logged somewhere. And that's why it gets suppressed, or eventually it dies down. Right? The agency of each and every individual will flourish and will allow for all of us to actually create an environment, society, where each one of us, when we walk out of our room, our homes, we will know that we belong in this world. There's a reason why certain segment of the society does not relate when they step out of their homes. That's because they don't see the infrastructure aligned with their needs. They don't feel that the messaging is for them. They feel alienated. And why am I saying they? There are most of the times when I feel alienated, I'm like, where am I? Are they not talking to me? So these are the two things I would say, both one for the people on whom the main decision lies, them being a change agent, and second, the stakeholders, the contributors, the audience, which is waiting to be explored.
Although, don't you think that will take us some time to get there?
Oh yeah, so when Shivangi was saying we will get to see it, I secretly wanted to send her a message that maybe in our next life or next to next life, I mean, in this life, this is a marathon, this is like a relay race. We will pass it on. Our previous generation passed it on and left it for us to pick it up. We are going to pass it on and leave it in some place safe and secure so that it doesn't die, fizzle out. The fire has to be, we have to make sure that the fire stays alive, and then the next generation is going to come and pick it up. It's not going to happen in this lifetime. Sorry, Shivangi. We'll just do our best together and as a community. But no, honestly speaking, in this lifetime, it's not happening. Not being pessimistic, but being a realistic here.
I guess that's important as well. So then my next question is to you, Shivangi. A recent report at Azim Premji University in India shows that during the first lockdown in 2020, only 7% of men lost their jobs compared to 47% of women who lost their jobs and did not return to work by the end of the year. What could be the reason behind this huge disparity?
As Pallavi mentioned that we'll see it probably in our next life. So it's also true that if you look at some of the reports, they show how clearly, the whole agenda of women equality has also been pushed back to about 40 years, given the COVID, entire pandemic that has happened. And I think there are a host of reasons for it, but primarily, if I have to say, there'll be two things which are interrelated and broadly, like very majorly, the reason why today we are at the place where we are. And first is, I think, the, which Pallavi also touched upon, the preset, preconceived notions or biases or the attitude that we have with respect to specific gender roles, which primarily play, actually that's the broad, that's the most major, thing that plays a role. Because if you look at what women are having to do or why are they having to leave their jobs, it's primarily because of unpaid care or, as we commonly call as domestic work, household chores that we talk about, or to take care of children, or to take care of, elderly people who are at home. And somehow that is expected of women, and that somehow that there is this thought that women will be able to do it better. So there is this notion or that, attitude that exists in our society, which has led a lot of women to leave the job. And the choices have had to be made between couples that, okay, between the two, this spouse needs to leave the job. And I think secondly, the other reason is that a lot of times if you see, and there could be, like a host of reasons, but women would be at, lower income stages as well, for various reasons, especially if they have to take care of family members, etc. at home, even before the pandemic. They would choose jobs which would not be very challenging, would not require too many work hours, which would not require too many promotions, etc. so that they could balance, if I can use that word, so that they could balance, work and home. So all of these are also reasons. And when the pandemic hit, naturally, as a family, when a call has to be taken as to who's going to leave the job, the call is that, okay, you know what, you earn lesser, so you leave it. And you have to anyway take care of the family, so you are going to, it's better that you do it. So that is one thing that has happened, and that has pushed women, back, economically speaking. Even though I remember that I think early this year itself, the Supreme Court did mention in one of the compensation-related cases that we need to look at the income of household, earning, or the work that housewives do as well, to calculate the kind of income they bring to the table, and they are kind of contribute to in the economy. That's something that they did say, but I think we are quite far away from, really starting to calculate household labor. I don't think we really have started doing that. If we did that, I think in terms of even the respect that, family has for the woman and the work they are doing would increase phenomenally, because today everything is calculated in terms of money. And somehow this aspect gets completely missed out. And if household, the work that we do as women at home, and if that gets calculated in the economic value that we bring to the table, I think it will increase exponentially. So, so that's one issue. And I think the other thing also that has happened quite a bit because of COVID is that, we were for some time feeling happy about the fact that we've been able to restrict child marriages for a while now, even though it still exists in India. But again, COVID has pushed it back. And you would see again how young women, young girls are getting married off just so that financially they become dependent later on. They have been asked to come back from, whichever metros or wherever other places they are studying or they are interning, etc., just so that they could be safe at home, they could be taken care of, and so that they don't, become a burden to the anyway reduced household income. So all of those things are also happening. So what we are saying is that even 40 years down the line, we are not going to see a lot of women coming into the workforce because half of them may have had to drop out of education. So there are all of these reasons, I think, that are playing a role. So, yeah.
Just out of curiosity, I had a question about, you said that during COVID, a lot of child marriage happened because they had to come back from where they were working, and so
No. So I was saying that a lot of child marriages are happening, especially where girl children are being married off, so that there is security in the sense that, okay, you know what, I may have to take care of this girl child. Rather, let me get this person married off so that the spouse takes care of her.
Right.
So yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
Thank you. So my next question again to Pallavi then is on the same note as talking with Hangi. So women's income in India was just 1/5 of that of a man. So why do we have such a scalable despite recent attempts of gender inclusivity by corporates? Sorry, your voice was breaking. I couldn't catch. Should I repeat the question?
Yeah, there's a part of this Instagram.
Okay. So women's income in India was just 1/5 that of a man. So why do we still have such a scalable difference despite attempts of gender inclusivity by the corporates? Was the question.
Going back to the we started this entire what Vangi just how the value is.
I'm sorry, am I not able to hear Pallavi?
Pallavi, your voice is breaking.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I was saying was that the worth of the talent, when we look at from the workplaces or the corporate perspective, is also clouded by these gender stereotypes, right? Now, every time a woman or female is looked at as a resource worth investment, these clouded judgments are actually creating the output or the salary that needs to be given to that person. Why would I invest if I think that this person is, let's say, and everything works against you, right? Based on your gender. So if I'm joining a company when I'm 23, 25, the questions being asked, so if someone gets to know that, hey, I'm from this and this region in the country, they already know that if I'm from Rajasthan, when I get married, my option of continuing to be part of the company is something that will not rest in my hand, but will be actually a dining table. where my voice might not be considered when somebody else is deciding it. Or I may have to shift cities because my partner career needs would require them to shift cities, and then I will definitely shift with them, not be able to continue. If I'm joining at a certain later stage, that would mean that, oh, if I do not have a child yet, I might be planning to have a child very soon. And no matter what this country right now is talking about, I see some men taking care of their young child. It could. It's like one in a million or one in a billion. It's still, the mother is still the primary taker. She is going to drop out from the workplace and she is going to start focusing on childbearing. Why would I invest in cultivating, in nurturing a talent, a resource who I can't even rely on because the decision is not going to be in her hand when the time will come? And the time will come. It is the biological as well as the societal come, which she will not be able to run away with. And no employer is going to have this conversation that, tell me, Pallavi, how much faith do you have that someday if your family is going to tell you stop working, will you fight against your family? Because that's too personal of a conversation. You know, thanks to laws like POSH Act, thankfully now employers can't get so personal and discuss the question. And then comes all these stereotypes associated with how women are better at certain kind of jobs. Women are, and the jobs that we are good at, we are not even given that MDPs and LDPs or specific training on. So we are given HR, admin, receptionist, sales, and it's not as if they're investing in us to make us leaders. Companies, when they're designing their succession planning, in their succession planning, they will always handpick the male counterparts compared to the female counterparts because they know that the male counterparts are here to stay. मतलब उनके घर में कोई बीमार हो जाएगा, किसी की डेथ हो जाएगी, बच्चा होगा, शादी होगी, they that male or that man always show up, right? And that's the conviction with which they are like, I'm going to invest in this. And when I look at my who is going to be the leader in my company tomorrow, they're banking on them. Why I not pay? Why? Why isn't I? In their head, this decision that they are making. And yes, we are trying to change it. These days, we are trying to get people growing studies and research that more emotional and men emotional. Are you able to hear?
Yeah, in the middle, we lost you for a second.
No issues. I'm saying that these days we are trying to convince the leadership and corporates that when we say that women are not emotionally equipped or women are more emotional to become leaders, are we saying that aggression is not an emotion? Are we saying that this being a go-getter and being an assertive leader is not an emotion? Everything is an emotion. The only difference is that when you say that women cry, you look at that as a weakness. And when a woman screams, you look at it as that hormones. But when a man does that, you're looking at it as a sign of a leadership, right? So this entire construct needs to be not really just reshuffled. We need to break that construct. We actually, if we could inject, and I'm sure Shivangi will resonate with it, if we could inject people by, to that will like completely disturb like the entire structure that we have built subconsciously in our head, that's when we will start looking at things from like fresh eyes and just look at it as a resource and a talent as a talent, and without any stereotypes associated with them.
I feel like if you and Shivangi and all of us, and so in our team also, mostly we have women. I don't know how it happened. And I feel like if we all sit and chat about this, because before when we were trying to think about what we talk about, we were having a conversation like this and it went on for very long. I think that if we all sat together and had this, I don't know how long it would go on for. Because everything you were saying, I totally agree, and everything that these are things that we all see every day and can't really do much about.
Yeah, you know that I look at men in the society they do one thing from the minute they wake up, okay, which is just their work. They better be good at it because that's the only thing that they do. Look at the woman, okay? She multitasks like crazy, and yet she is expected to excel in everything. Because if she does not, then the other world is just waiting to tell her, "हमने तो बोला ही था, मत करो," right? And yesterday somebody sent me a message asking, "Do you hate men?" I was like, "I don't hate men. I hate patriarchy." Okay, the problem is patriarchy. When you wake up and you do only one thing every day, you better be good at it. You can't compare it to women's struggle or any other gender struggle here. Totally different.
That's true. Okay, so my next question then is to Shivani. So, female representation in the judiciary is minuscule. Across the 26 high courts in India, there are only 82 women judges out of a total of 1,079 judges and 2 judges in the apex court. So how can we solve the problem of lack of representation of women in the fields like law and leadership in general?
Sure. I think before I answer this question, I have to say that I'm really sorry to hear that in your generation and with your team members as well, you are having similar discussions, because it also almost feels like nothing has changed. So it's just sad to know, but I hope that again someday we see the light and a better one. So yeah, I'll try and answer your question. And I think that as far as your question is concerned, I think I'm going to talk about leadership in general, because yes, there is very limited representation in judiciary, but I think that the causes are the same actually across the board. So and since Pallavi also touched upon quite a few of those challenges, like we were talking about opportunities and how that lack of opportunity comes up from different perspectives, not just the family, but for example, if you've seen this movie called Gunjan Saxena, that's what is coming to mind right now, where they've shown how this woman has been offered a seat because the government kind of put it out, and so the seat has been that has been offered, which means the so-called equality is being created. But then when she actually enters that academy, what is happening? There is no washroom for her to change. There is no amenities available, but the expectation is that she would change her clothes and report on time to the place that she's supposed to report to. How is she supposed to do that? Yeah, so I think that when we talk about things like these, it's also not just making some sort of reservations that is really going to help. For example, even now we've got the NDA entrance exams just a couple of days back. The Supreme Court has again laid out that this is something that women can do now. But again, the larger question is, have we really built the infrastructure, the policies? Has there been a shift in attitude? Are we in a place to really go through this change? And again, I want to refer to the same movie itself, that if she had not performed the way she did, okay, what is it that would have been asked? That we gave the opportunity, we made it possible, but then you could not perform. So really, you don't deserve the seat at all. So basically that ball is in your court now, and by hook or by crook or by like whatever way, with sleepless nights or whatever you want to do it. Otherwise you're going to lose it. And it's because of those few successes, thankfully, those have over the years made way for women in general, and where today we see news like, okay, 17 women flying from India to, I don't know, US or something, they flew, and so that's what made the headlines. But if these stereotypical understandings and notions would not be broken, then how are we going to do it? Right? So the pressure and the ball is in the court of women to really prove it, in spite of all the efforts that are being taken, instead of it being on the society at large to make it possible, which is funny and sad at the same time. So I think that's one of the things that leads to lack of leadership skills, because firstly there is lack of opportunity. Okay, if you don't have the opportunity, how will you raise to that level? Secondly, I think also this constant this constant telling that happens that, you are not good at this, you should take care of household chores, why are you applying to so and so places, you are ending up wasting our money, you're doing this and that. There is already such low self-esteem and low level of confidence. How do you expect a person to really reach a position and say that, okay, you know what, you're going to be put in the boardroom tomorrow, now handle that situation? Yeah. And let's say you are even put in that boardroom. What happens then? So you've entered the boys' club then.
Yeah.
And when you've entered that room, what are you supposed to do? And you won't believe I was reading about it about I think last year I was just reading about this, and I came across a couple of these courses that are offered for women to train them to be in the boardroom. And some of the things that were mentioned is that deal with it. The kind of attitude, the kind of discussion that happens in the boardroom, deal with it. Or it said that you make a girls' club of your own. Because really I don't have any other work in life. I should make a boys versus girls war, and I should have my own girls club. So that's the second teaching. You ignore the situation. Don't be too vocal about your thoughts, because nobody is going to take it very politely. You're bringing in the emotional touch. Remain emotional. So those are the kind of learnings we are talking about for women who are wanting to get into leadership positions. Right? And we are talking about these courses and skill development activities that are happening for women, but we don't have anything which is happening for the rest of the team members. To say that don't engage in conversations to say, hey babe, you kind of reached here, you've reached this room, or that we are going to constantly talk about your gender and we're going to make fun of it, and we are going to expect you to laugh, because if you don't, then you're just you are feminist, in the most negative way possible, right? So all of these things are going to happen. So you better be a part of it. So that teaching is not going to happen. Similarly, when it comes to being mentored, I have personally, when I've interacted with some of the leaders, they, without being on record, going on record, they often do mention that, look, I don't want to take the risk of being a mentor to a woman, because I don't know what's going to happen. Tomorrow there may be a complaint against me, and if there is no complaint also, there may be gossips that I am sleeping around with that woman, and that's why she's getting the benefit, right? And for all if some woman has actually reached a senior position, the gossips would anyway entail the fact that she must have slept her way up.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there would be also terms like man boss, boss lady, all of those things. And if you look at the Urban Dictionary and how they define these words, they're like, a beautiful woman who's able to handle a position of responsibility. That's what the definition looks like, right? So we are talking about these kind of things, and then terms like those will also be constantly used. So how would you expect a woman to really, stay in that position? So I'm not against the idea that a woman should not be skilled or should not be trained. I think every human being needs training at some point in time, right? That's why we have ideas like mentorship, etc. But the point is that along with the women that are being trained, or there needs to be sensitization and awareness on all levels. Because just it is going to lead to disbalance, right? If you're just increasing knowledge and awareness for one section of the society and leaving out the rest, it's not going to help. So all of that is really, really important. I think all of these play a role, and that's why we don't have a lot of women leaders, and there is such a huge gap.
So do you think we have a way of making that happen, and not making a girls group, but something else that will actually work?
Yes, I think that one of the first things that we say is that when you treat another human being with the same respect that you would treat yourself and your family members, and you would expect someone to treat you, without looking at, as Pallavi was also mentioning, without looking at what their gender is, and what kind of looks they have, are they slim or not, are they fat or not, do they have children, like those kind of things, without getting into their sexual preferences and arrangements and all of that, and then trying to gossip about it. If you stop doing all of that, automatically merit and the talent will take over, and that's all that we need to do. And that's not just for women, that's for everybody.
Yeah.
We wouldn't even need reservations and the kind of things that we are talking about for women or SC, ST, OBC, now, perhaps even LGBT, QIA. We wouldn't need all of that if we just ensure that these basics are in place.
So I was saying, just tweak the thinking, easy.
Yeah, so actually, I resonate with what Pallavi said. Just ensure that the memory is completely made blank, like put some injection, do something, and then just ensure that the right kind of teaching happens. So I guess that also shows how our upbringing happens, and if we are able to have the right kind of education and not just this plain language that we read in books, if we change the methodology of this education system, and not just institutions, I mean also at homes, right, if we change that style, then it's going to really make a difference, and that's when the wiring will change. I mean, that's what we mean, right? But I think all of it is a huge cycle. You can't really say that this is the starting point, so it all goes in a cycle. So I think at our, wherever we are all at, I think we need to be disruptors at all levels, so that all parts of the cycle are impacted in some way or the other.
I just want to add to what Shivangi is saying. The issue that when you talk to somebody in homes, they say, what do we do? Let the schools teach this. When you talk to somebody in schools, they say, what we do? It's there in the syllabus. When you go to workplaces, they say, what can we do? This is a structural problem. When you go to the government, they say, make the laws, nobody is following them. And I'll go back to resonate with what Shivangi said, right? Instead of doing this, we just need to say, what can we do? Like, change the tone of the question. That instead of saying, what can we do? What can we do? And that's the question that we need to ask. Wherever you are sitting, if you're a parent, if you're a teacher, if you're somebody who writes curriculums, if you're somebody who runs an education institution, somebody who's an HR, a legal counsel, a founder of a company, instead of just pushing the cushion aside and saying that, hey, it's not my problem, somebody else's. I just need to ask ourselves, hey, wherever I'm standing, what role can I play in this one? And that's it's not as if that is completely absent, otherwise it will be complete chaos. And I always say that when people say this like this, like that, the system is working, because otherwise there will be an absolute chaos everywhere. Right? That means there are people who are converted, like 3 of us and the 13 or 12 people who are the audience. There are more like us. We just need to make sure that we infect more people. This is what we need. So yeah, just add to Shivangi.
So now I want to, although this is a conclusive question, I want to put it in a way that this will be the question to kind of wrap up and talk about everything we just talked about, but explain it to everybody who is with us. So according to a research, the major causes of gender disparity are unpaid care responsibilities, lack of legislative actions to enhance access for women labor, gender-based violence and harassment, lack of women representation in leadership positions. So, can societal reforms, anti-harassment practices, and stronger execution of legislation policies bring the change we seek? So, this question I just want to open to both of you.
Connect. You want to go first?
Sure. So, yeah, this is, as you rightly said, it is a conclusive question, but I think legislations can definitely make it happen, the implementation of it. But I also feel that we need to do a lot even with our legislations. I mean, the kind of, sometimes the kind of language that we use in our legislations, the kind of judgments that we still end up passing, as a country. I'm sure you would have seen the Tarun Tejpal decision that came up, and you would have seen the kind of statements that came up in that to check about the so-called rape, whether it happened or not, and what the judge depended on to come to a conclusion. A lot of our legislation still has the word he all throughout, where actually it should not even be he or she, it should be they now. Right? So those, really primitive 1900s ka legislation still going on with no absolute change. So if you ask me, legislations also need a change. if we leave the legislations as is and we still interpret them to include all, given that the fundamental rights, thankfully, they apply to all, even then the policies of organizations, how do they read currently? Again, the kind of language that it includes, what kind of protection does it give? What kind of benefits does it give? Are there, like the kind of example we discussed, the Gunjan Saxena kind of example that we discussed, have the workplaces been made in a manner, or have those kind of mechanisms been put in place that someone who's at a disadvantaged position is able to rise up to the same level? Have we really done that, infrastructure wise and everything else wise as well? If we have policies in place, are we implementing those policies? Because a lot of people tell me that how the maternity related provisions or the policies exist in organizations, but nobody gives 6 months. Typically, people are told that, you either leave the organization and go, take 3 months cutting as settlement and go, otherwise let's get into litigation. Or, the fact that it's like this, it's there like this, but please ensure that you can come back as soon as possible. So then are we, like, what are we doing with the legislations? I mean, law bana diya, 6 mahine bol diya, then what? Right? So what are we really doing with it? So I think all of these things are important, and regular awareness on all of these things is very, very important. And a lot is changing slowly and gradually, thankfully. The kind of movies that come out nowadays, the kind of shows we see, the kind of advertisements, everything has gone through a change. I mean, there's a stark difference. I think in the 1990s, I'm a 1990s kid. And if I see the kind of things we see today in terms of shows, etc., there is a stark difference. So things are, of course, becoming much better. But much more needs to be done in terms of awareness. And media will obviously, public, majority, it affects the majority, right? So I think that's, again, something which is very important. And on an individual level, I mean, it's always easy to say that someone else should do it. But even on an individual level, we have domestic help, we have support. What do we do? How do we treat individuals? I mean, that's something which is on us, right? We can't blame that on the government. What do we do? So I think cleaning of our brains will start at home. And if we could do that, that also is going to be a good thing. That's going to lead to an eventual change. And yeah, that's how I'd like to end this.
Thank you. Pallavi?
Yeah, so taking the cue from what Shivangi was saying, right? See, change requires a lot of things. You're looking at it from the legal, yes, since language is something that Shivangi has already covered, I'll not reinforce that because there's no debate around it. Something that is like critical, and it's high time that we do that. But the next level, when we talk about the justice system in our country, when we talk about justice related to gender, in the way that it should persist and exist in the society, when we are making laws, right? The next step comes in educating people. Whose responsibility is it and how we are. Yes, somewhere, some ministry, some hand comes out. But why would people pick it up? People anyway, if they wanted to pick it up, they would anyway go and look for this information. So how we are educating is also something which is very critical, because in the absence of proper education of what I'm supposed to do or what laws are created for me, what happens is, on one hand, there's non-implementation. Like right now, Shivangi and I am talk to 10 people wherein we tell people that we comply with POSH Act, and they say that, oh, we didn't know we were supposed to do this. It's 9 years journey. People are still like expressing shock that हमें नहीं पता था कि ये करना है. That's happening business owners directly, right? It's coming out somewhere in the Me Too movement, hashtags and others, but it's not getting directly communicated to them. That's one. On the other hand, for the stakeholders, for the beneficiaries for whom this law and these rights are given, when you go to proper education, that's when misuse, which creates further confusion for people. That हमने तो बोला ही था इनके लिए बनाने की जरूरत नहीं है, which is not right. Nobody wants to. I'm going around that part that people do not want to misuse, but sometimes we have to understand that, hey, we did not actually educate properly, maybe to begin with, right? That this is why it exists. This is how you should be. After education comes the part, the provisions, the mechanisms which are there. The mechanisms where I can now reach out to as and when my rights are violated, which is for me as a beneficiary, which is for me as a stakeholder, and people who are appointed the responsibility of implementing something, right? There, what are the us with respect to as and when we need to reach out to certain people, we even reach out to them. You can beautiful, me across the river, the crocodiles, and I don't know how to say what is that mechanism. Nothing. I can't get there. I can't access it, right? So for me, that accessibility becomes very important thing. That's the second level. After you have educated, you have to make sure that the mechanisms are accessible for me and mechanisms are prepared when I reach there. Then comes the third part, which actually keeps shocking me even till day, that people can say that we'll not do it. What will the government do? You know, the inadequacy of the government to not be able to catch these violations is creating more. Can take one step forward by creating these beautiful, amazing laws. Okay. But if you're telling somebody that, hey, you're supposed to do this, you're required to do this, you also need to make sure that the provisions that are created for violation or non-compliance or non-adherence, they're also effective. For that, the that somebody somewhere is able to monitor this, whether people are following it or not following it. And if ever they're caught not following something, then the penalizing should happen. Right? This is the third step which is there. Right now, in this entire three-level approach, they're weak. And somewhere I believe that if we actually just start focusing on the monitoring mechanisms right now, monitoring and penalizing, the other will start falling in line, because that's the most important thing. If you're not even practicing, you're not even adopting it, and you know that you can get away with anything. Invest in educating their people. Why would anyway invest in implementing it? Why would anyone build any accessibility measures? There's no reason for that. So lack of ownership, accountability, monitoring, and the entire structure fails. We might as well not made it then. That,
I missed the last.
I'm saying that's how null it is, right? It's almost like it's like telling a child don't eat the candy, and the child eats it. You'll do what? Nothing. So next time when you tell the child that don't eat the candy, the child is not going to take you seriously, because the last time it didn't listen to you, what did you do? You didn't penalize, you didn't reprimand. For all you know, you didn't even know that the child has eaten the candy. That's what's happening with most of the laws right now. People are violating them. We are either not able to catch them, or if we catch them, we don't know where to report. And even if we go and report, nobody is penalizing them and telling them that, hey, we're not supposed to do this. So in the absence of this entire cycle, any legal reform actually fails its purpose. So that level of strengthening is required. That level of restructuring is required. On an everyday basis, that's what Shivangi and people like us are working.
So I was going to say something and sum this up and say something nice towards this. I think you both have summed this up really, really well. I think there's nothing
Please,
I could
because
add
we're
to this.
saying all the things that are not happening.
No, but someone has to say it. So, so that's why I think I'll rest the case, and because I have.
Well said.
I'll put that in well. So, but I think we can say that at least if maybe we can't change much, but at least we can educate ourselves as to what is happening, how the world around us is, and maybe in our little way do something, and hopefully be optimistic about a better future for all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's no harm.
Actually, that's really important. Otherwise, the whole the passion or the love for the work that you do is going to go away if
Yeah.
that optimism is not there. So, really, really important.
I think
Thank you
so
so
to leave the world a little bit better. Like at least that's what we can at least
we can aim for.
that.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us. We are so glad, and we've gotten a comment as well saying that saying thanks for this, and really thanks for this because I have learned a lot, and I'm sure people whoever came joined us also learned. And we hope to talk to you both very soon.
For
Thank
inviting
you.
and
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.